everyone, it's Lucy from My Crazy Craft Life, and I'm here today with a design team post for Scrapping for Less. I'm going to be making a center pop-out card, and I know there's been a lot of them out there lately. Lawn Fawn just came out with a die set that will create one. There's a lot of videos out there, but I really didn't like the Lawn Fawn set because I'm just not a fan of those 3-inch cards. I'm not. So I wanted a full A2 size card, so 4¼ by 5½. And so I watched some videos, and the video that I ended up taking the most out of is May made it. She created one quite a few months back, and I liked how easy hers was, and I liked how it came out. I just didn't like a couple aspects of it. Her layers on the inside that you kind of put the images on and stuff went horizontal when you opened it instead of, bending and looking forward at you. And I did like that about the Lawn Fawn one. So I kind of figured this out and made my own one for this. Now I do not leave the coloring in here because one, I colored a lot, but also because this is kind of a long video, because I left the video pretty slow so that I could really go through these instructions, and it's really very simple to make, so I wouldn't be afraid to try this card because it's way simpler than you would think it would be. It's very easy to make. I did stamping, and the stamp sets that I used today were the Greeting Farm Hands Down, and then just for all of the little pieces that are in Sunny Studios Magical Mermaids, I used that one just for all the little images of fish and different stuff. And those are the colors that I used to do all of the coloring with. But like I said, I didn't leave any of that in here. Now, the first thing that I'm going to tell you, and you're going to see a template that I pull out, I would not use a die that large for the 2 openings. And the other thing is I would not use a die that has a stitched, that's stitched around it, because it doesn't quite look right when you do that. Now what's nice about this is it actually uses a standard 8½ by 11-inch paper. And you're going to score it on the 11½-inch side at 2 3/4, 5½, and 8¼ and then you're going to flip it over or flip it around and long ways, so that you're scoring it from the vertical way at 4¼ inches, and that's it. That's all the scoring that you'll do for that. Then whether you use a X-Acto knife or whatever, or you want to use your trimmer, you're going to cut it just between those scored lines. So at the 2 3/4 mark down to the 8¼ mark, you're going to score it in between those 2 areas, and that's going to be the area that's going to pop out. So that's it for that. So it's pretty simple in that respect. You're going to score everything, and you want to make sure that you get good score lines and keep everything really straight so that everything lines up properly when, after you kind of piece everything else together. So make sure that you go through and score it all with your bone folder or whatever your scoring tool, so that you can, like I said, make sure you got real crisp, clean lines, and make sure that everything is scored really, really well. Because when this all folds up together, it'll be off kilter. It won't be lined up properly if your score lines aren't straight when you're doing this. So like I said, that's a really important part of this card. So after you score everything, you're going to leave it folded in half like this. But what I was saying about the dies with the stitched, because you're going to die cut both both of the panels that pop out together, that's going to end up looking strange, like, on the one side, because it's actually the wrong way. So that's really it. After I kind of popped this out and, scored everything and opened it up, I just went back, and after I folded everything together, I kind of rescored it. But that's it. That's how the card is going to look. And you'll end up gluing down those side panels there and stuff. And you see there that it's a standard card, so it's 5½ by 4¼ which, like I said, was what I was going for. And then in that center area is where you're going to be doing your die cutting. And you do want to make sure that you have it on the right area. So it's going to be that bottom corner when it's folded. If you just pick it up, you can open it up there, and that's what you want to score. So like I said, I used a smaller die this time for the opening, but as you can see there, that had a stitched border around it, and the one side just looks, it's the back, so it just looks a little bit off when you're looking at it. The next thing is the layers. So these layers I made a 1/2 inch apart. So I made one at 5 inches, one at 4.5 inches, and then one at 4 inches. And I left them about 1.25 inches wide. So the length is 4 inches, 4.5 inches, and 5 inches, and then they're about 1.25 inches wide. And then what I did was I took some hillside border dies, and I just kind of cut the tops off. I left it as close to the top as I could, so they're going to be a little bit different sizes depending on the hillside border die that you use, but you don't want to cut too much of it off because you still want to make sure that you have enough, one, to kind of layer over each other, and then also have enough to fold over and use for your, what's going to actually place it into the card. So like I said, there those pieces are. They're all about 1.25 inches, and then in 4 inches, 4.5 inches, and 5 inches. Now, when you're going to do your scoring on these, you're going to score on each side 1/4 inch. So 1/4 inch, and then 4 3/4 for the 5-inch one. And then you're going to score it directly in the center. So you're going to score it at 2.5 inches. And then the next one you're going to score at 1/4 inch and 4 1/4, and then at 2 1/4 inches you're going to score the center. And then the 4-inch one you're going to do 1/4, and then 3 3/4, and you're going to score at 2 inches. And then you can fold up your areas right there. I did decide to take a little bit of Distress Oxide after I started doing this, and just give it a little bit of dimension with some color on those layers. After I did it and after I put the card together, I don't think it's really necessary because it's really all covered up pretty much anyway. So I don't think it's really necessary to take that extra step, but I did it, and it was fine either way. I don't think you're going to lose anything. I ended up using 1/8 inch tape, score tape. So you want to make sure you have good strong score tape because it's going to have to hold it down. And even though you score it at 1/4 inch on that template that you saw I'm in, I used 1/4 inch tape, and sometimes it was just a little bit too large depending on like exactly where you scored it at and that type of thing. So you do just want to make sure that your tape isn't going to be on the outside of those scored areas, so those 1/4 inch on each side of it. You want to make sure that the tape is going to fit in there. And then, like I said, here I'm just going to get some of these Distress Oxides and put a little bit of more color on it, but like I said, I don't really think that it's necessary. Originally when I did it, I thought it would give a little more dimension to the card, but like I said, you're not really seeing it anyway. So I guess a lot would depend too on how much stuff that you put in there. I kind of filled mine. I made so many stamped, I think I made 5 kind of cards made, or 5 cards full of stamped images, and colored them all, and then I used my scan and cut to cut them all out, which took about 10 minutes, so, and then another 5 minutes or so to get it off of the sheet and everything. So I do love my scan and cut. I know I talk about it all the time, but I don't know what I would do without it. I don't know if I could craft and do stamping if I didn't have my scan and cut, because I use it every single time I do anything, really, any type of stamping pretty much. And then I thought about putting some Distress Oxide on the card, but I decided just to leave it one color because of what I was actually going to end up doing with this and putting different layers on it. So like I said, you're going to put score tape on both ends of the layers that are going to go on the inside. Now I did not tape my card together yet at this point, or glue it together, because it was easier to work on when it was left open, and I could just lift the flap up and not have to worry about what was going on, whether, and had more room to work, definitely. And then what you're going to do when you put this on, so I took one side off, I lined up that center score line with the center score line inside of the card. So the area that was the 5.5 inch score line, you're going to line it up exactly with that. Then the next thing, the next layer that I took in there, and you're going to want to kind of butt it up against it because you're going to want to cover those layers. You don't want spaces in between the layers. So you're going to have one right next to each other and a little bit overlapping. So those are all three of them that I put in there. Then fold them in half, and then you're going to remove the liner for the score tape on the other opposite side, and then you're just going to fold over the card in this direction that the card's actually going, so when it's closed. And that's going to be your layers inside of the pop-out portion. So you see I just folded it over, made sure that it was stuck down there really good, and then there are all my layers. And when you flip down that top half of the card, you have the pop-out part of the entire card all kind of neatly done in there, and like that's really easy, right? I thought it was super simple after I kind of sat down and did it and worked with it. And then I left, like I said, the card open. I did not glue it down until I was pretty much almost done with it, because that way I was able to easily work in there. But when you do glue down the area, you're just going to glue down the two ends, so the part from 0 to 2 3/4 inch, and then the part from 8 1/4 to 11.5 inches. That's what's going to actually be taped down. Now you can do a few different things with this. I put two separate layers on for the outside panel, and then I layered the kind of sides of the inside. And for those, you're going to use a piece that is 4 inches by 2.5 inches, so that's going to give you a little border around there. Now if you decided that you wanted to do a complete layer, so you wanted to cover the entire thing, you're going to do that just as if you were making a base, or I mean, yeah, not a base, a card panel to cover a regular card. So you would make it 4 inches by 5 1/4. But you have to make sure that you score it down the center so that it's going to be able to fold along with the card when you open it up. And with that, I would think, I didn't actually do it, but I would think you would have to make sure it was glued down really well, and it's going to be, you know, moved around a lot. And I didn't want to have any issues with it coming undone or, you know, peeling or not being glued down well enough. So I just decided to do the panels. Now I put, like I said, tons and tons of things in this inside of this card because I just thought it was so stinking cute when as I was putting it all together. I loved all the images. I loved the whole idea of what it was. I did think after I finished the card that it would have been super cool, especially since this is water themed, if I would have put a piece of acetate over each of the openings where you die cut for, you know, the pop out portion of it to make kind of like an aquarium look. I think that would have been super cool, but I didn't do that, so mine doesn't have that. But if you make one, make sure you post it somewhere so I can see it, because I would love to see one that has the acetate on there. Like I said, I think it would be so cute. And so as I kind of was putting all of this together, I would just flip it over and look at it from both angles to make sure that I had all the areas covered that I wanted it to be, and I filled in all the spaces that I wanted filled and did all the different things that I wanted to do. So like I said, it's super simple to work on when you have all of this open area. Those layers pretty much go flat when you're working, you know, when it's open like that, so you can just kind of play around with it and do different stuff. And as you can see, I put those rocks on actually on the front part of the card that's going to pop out, so that's actually going to stay right there with that. And then on the front of part of the pop out portion, so the inside of the card but the front part of the pop out portion, you can also put a banner. So however long you would want to have your banner, if you wanted it to go across the whole thing or if you only wanted it to be 4 inches, and then you just have to make sure that you score it in the center. So you would score it, if it was a 4-inch banner, you would score it at 2 inches, and then you could actually glue that to the top or to the bottom of the base of the pop-out portion of the card, and then you can have your sentiment right there. Now I left both of the side panels of the inside of the card blank, so then I could do my writing on it. And I put the sentiment, and I kind of put a few more images and stuff on the outside two panels of the card, and that's where I could, left my sentiment and whatnot. But you could easily put sentiments on the inside on those panels, or even if you fill up the entire card, meaning that you decorate the side panels as well, you can even write on the back of it. I think all of those are great ideas to do. So at this point, I was just, like I said, trying to decide exactly how I wanted everything. And I stamped the sentiment, like I said. So that is actually the front of the card. So the front of the card has those two panels. And I decided to use this, the inside, or the negative, no, not the negative, the positive of the stitched circles that I had cut out from the inside of the pop-up. That's what I used to put on here. So it kind of worked out perfectly. And see those little glasses that I put on that guy? I think those are so adorable with the acetate. I think they just came out great. And I use Stays On ink for that. If you're working with acetate, you're going to have to work with something like Stays On if you don't have that. That's going to be a permanent ink. And it does get your stamp black, and it really doesn't come off, but it's okay because I cleaned my stamp, but it was still black. But like I said, in order to use the Stays On, you're going to have to do that. So now this is where I'm going to seal down the card. I kind of had it all finished. Everything looked good. I was ready to go. And I just used score tape all around here to make sure that everything was going to stay down really good and nothing bubbled up. And that's how it's going to be folded. Once you pull up all the backing of the tape, then you just kind of fold that over. Obviously you want to make sure that you keep it level and straight. And then that is it. That is the card. I did put a couple more shells on the outside of the card, and like I said, right there, like on the top or even the bottom, I could definitely see you putting a banner and having some type of sentiment on there. I did go back and I put some Spectrum Noir Sparkle on the fish and the shells, and that was it for this card after I finished that up. So like I said, it was super simple. It was way simpler than I thought it was going to be to make the card, and I was so happy with how it turned out, and I was glad that I kind of watched a bunch of different things about it and figured out a way to make a card that I was happy with and that had all of the elements that I wanted to be part of it. So that's it, and here I just took a little video of it actually in the envelope. You can see how thin it is, so it's not going to be that big of a deal even with all that stuff that I put on it. And then there's the card, and they just pop it open. Like I said, I just think that is so cute. I think it's such a great idea that somebody had. It was not me that had the idea. I just kind of tweaked it to make it what I wanted it to be. But I think that's adorable. And like I said, fits in a standard envelope, A2 size envelope, and you are good to go. So that's it. I hope everybody enjoyed this. If you make them, I definitely want to see some. And you can pick up the supplies over at Scrapping for Less. I will link the supplies that they have there at the store. And thanks for joining me. Take care.